There are 7 specific phrases, 7 powerful ways of communicating with the avoidant person that bypass their defensive system entirely, that make them feel safe instead of threatened, that create attraction instead of triggering their flight response, that actually work to maintain connection with them while simultaneously protecting your own worth and boundaries. And these phrases aren't manipulations or games or tricks to make them want you, but are genuine communication strategies that honor both their need for space and autonomy and your need for respect and connection, creating language that the avoidance system can actually receive without triggering the panic and withdrawal that most communication creates in them. The reason most of your attempts to communicate with the avoidant fail isn't because you're saying the wrong things necessarily, but because the avoidance defensive system is hypervigilant. For any communication that feels like pressure, like control, like demands for intimacy they're not ready to provide, like threats to their independence, like obligations they fear they cannot meet. And normal relationship communication, even when it's healthy and reasonable, often triggers these defenses because the avoidant interprets requests for consistency as demands, interprets expressions of need as pressure, interprets discussions about feelings as traps, interprets any relationship conversation as threat to their freedom and autonomy. But these 7 phrases are specifically constructed to communicate what you need while simultaneously signaling to the avoidance defensive system that you're not a threat, that you respect their autonomy, that you have your own life and security, that you're not trying to control them or pressure them or trap them, that you're offering connection as option rather than demanding it as obligation. When you use these phrases correctly, meaning when you use them from genuine place of having boundaries and self-respect, rather than as manipulation tactics while remaining desperate and boundary-less, they create completely different dynamic with the avoidant where they feel safe enough to move closer instead of feeling threatened and withdrawing, where they experience you as attractive, secure person rather than as anxious pursuing threat, where they recognize you as rare person who understands their needs while also maintaining your own worth, which is combination so rare that avoidants cannot resist it when they encounter it, because it's exactly what their wounded system has been looking for their entire life. Someone who can be close without being consuming. Someone who wants them without needing them desperately. Someone who respects their space while also having firm boundaries about what they'll accept. Someone who makes them feel safe enough that their defenses can lower without triggering panic about being trapped or controlled or consumed. Phrases 1 to 3. The communication that makes them feel safe instead of pressured. The first 3 phrases create safety for the avoidant by communicating your needs and boundaries without the pressure or demand energy that normally triggers their flight response. Understanding why these specific phrases work reveals the psychology that makes them effective. Phrase 1. Take all the time you need. I'm going to specific thing you're doing with your life. This phrase is powerful because it gives them space without waiting for them, eliminating the pressure of feeling responsible for your happiness while you wait. When the avoidant says they need space or time, the typical response is either pursuing them despite their request or agreeing to give space while clearly waiting anxiously for their return. Both responses create pressure. Pursuit is obvious pressure, but anxious waiting also creates pressure because they feel responsible for you sitting around suffering while they take space. This phrase eliminates both. Take all the time you need genuinely gives them the space without resentment or time limits. But the crucial second part, I'm going to visit friends this weekend, focus on my work project, take that class I've been wanting to take, communicates you're living your full life, not waiting desperately for their return. This removes pressure because you're handling yourself. They're not responsible for your well-being during their space, and they don't need to rush back to rescue you from loneliness. The phrase works because it respects their need while demonstrating your independence. Phrase 2. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm also not going to accept specific behavior. Let me know what works for you. This phrase creates safety through certainty about your presence while establishing firm boundaries about treatment, giving them clear framework. Avoidants need two seemingly contradictory things: assurance you won't abandon them, and clarity about what behavior costs them the relationship. This phrase provides both. I'm not going anywhere addresses their abandonment wound. You're committed, you're stable, you're not leaving at first difficulty. But I'm also not going to accept being ignored for days, hot and cold behavior, last-minute cancellations. Establishes clear boundary about what's unacceptable, making expectations explicit rather than unclear. The final part, let me know what works for you, invites their participation in solution while making clear that current behavior doesn't work. The phrase works because it provides security while requiring respect, giving them both the stability they need and the clear boundaries that actually make them feel safer by making expectations explicit. Phrase 3, I understand you need space, time, independence. I need specific need. How can we both get what we need? This phrase reframes conflict as problem to solve together, rather than as you demanding they change, creating collaboration instead of pressure. When you express needs to avoidant, they typically hear it as demand that requires them to sacrifice their needs for yours, triggering their fear of being controlled or of losing themselves. This phrase completely reframes the dynamic. I understand you need space, time, independence, validates their need as legitimate, showing you're not trying to eliminate what they require. I need regular communication, quality time, weekly, consistency, states your need as equally legitimate, not as demand, but as fact about what you require. How can we both get what we need? Positions you as teammates, problem solving, rather than as adversaries where one person's needs must dominate. The phrase works because it acknowledges both people have legitimate needs and invites creative solution where both needs are honored, removing the zero-sum dynamic avoidance fear where relationship means their needs don't matter. The power of these three phrases is in the balance they strike between reassurance and boundaries, between understanding and self-respect. They communicate to the avoidant, I see your needs and I respect them, and I also have needs that matter equally, and I believe we can figure out how to honor both. This is radically different from the usual extremes avoidants encounter. Either people who have no boundaries and accommodate everything, which makes avoidant lose respect and feel burdened by someone with no self, or people who have rigid demands that allow no space for avoidance needs, which triggers their flight response because it feels controlling. These phrases create middle path that's rare and deeply attractive to avoidants because it promises relationship where they don't have to choose between having their needs met or meeting yours. Both are possible, both matter, and you're approaching it as collaborative problem rather than as power struggle. Phrases 4-5, the words that respect their independence while maintaining connection. The fourth and fifth phrases specifically address the avoidant's core need for independence and autonomy while maintaining connection, showing them that relationship with you doesn't require sacrificing their freedom. Understanding these phrases reveals how to honor their independence without enabling their avoidance. Phrase 4, I love that you have your own life, interests, friends. It makes you more interesting to me. This phrase transforms their independence from relationship threat into relationship asset, making autonomy attractive rather than problematic. Avoidants are accustomed to partners who feel threatened by their independence, who want to be included in everything, who feel jealous of time spent on independent pursuits, who frame autonomy as problem to solve. This makes independence feel like relationship liability, making them choose between maintaining autonomy or maintaining relationship. This phrase completely reverses this. I love that you have your own life, interests, friends, explicitly values their independence instead of threatening it. It makes you more interesting to me, reframes independence as attractive quality rather than as relationship problem. The phrase works because it eliminates the perceived conflict between being in relationship and maintaining independence. With you, they can have both. Relationship doesn't require sacrificing autonomy. It actually benefits from their autonomy because you find independent person more attractive than dependent one. This is deeply relieving to avoidants because it eliminates the core sacrifice they believe relationship requires. Phrase 5. Do what feels right for you. I trust you to know what you need. This phrase demonstrates you're not trying to control their choices while expressing confidence in their judgment, creating safety through trusted autonomy. Avoidants are hypervigilant about being controlled. They interpret suggestions as demands, requests as pressure, preferences as attempts to manipulate their behavior. This hypervigilance makes normal relationship interaction feel threatening. This phrase actively counteracts this. Do what feels right for you explicitly gives them full autonomy over their choices. You're not trying to control them, not manipulating them toward particular choice, not pressuring them to choose based on what you want. I trust you to know what you need expresses confidence in their self-knowledge and their decision-making, showing you believe they're capable adult who can determine their own needs without your management. The phrase works because it signals you're not seeking to control them, which is rare enough in their experience that it creates safety they're not accustomed to feeling in relationships. When they're not defending against your control, they have mental and emotional space to actually consider what they want, rather than reflexively resisting what they perceive you're trying to make them do. These phrases work together to communicate a powerful message. Your independence isn't a threat to me, it's attractive. Your autonomy isn't a problem to solve, it's quality I value. Being with me doesn't require you to give up your separate self. It requires you to bring your full self, including your independence. This message is revolutionary for avoidance because every relationship they've had before has communicated, either explicitly or implicitly, that relationship requires sacrifice of independence, that love means merger, that commitment means giving up autonomy. Your communication that independence is valued rather than threatened, that autonomy is attractive rather than problematic, that relationship with you enhances rather than diminishes their freedom, creates entirely different understanding of what relationship with you would mean. This understanding allows them to consider closeness without the terror that closeness has always triggered, because closeness has always meant loss of self in their experience. But closeness with you might not mean that. Your words suggest you want them to maintain their self, which makes closeness imaginable rather than terrifying. The critical element in these phrases is authenticity. They only work if you genuinely mean them. If you're saying, I love that you have your own life, while secretly resenting their independence, they'll sense the inauthenticity and trust will be damaged. If you're saying, do what feels right for you, while hoping they'll choose what you want and being disappointed when they don't, the phrase becomes manipulation rather than genuine respect for autonomy. These phrases require you to actually value their independence, to actually trust their judgment, to actually want them to maintain their own life. This might require work on yourself, examining whether you can genuinely be in relationship with a highly independent person, whether you actually respect autonomy, or whether you want to control, whether you're secure enough to want a partner who maintains strong separate self. But if you can genuinely mean these phrases, if you actually value independence and trust autonomy, they're incredibly powerful, because avoidants are desperate for someone who can be close without trying to control them or consume them. Phrases 6, 7. The language that creates attraction. By showing your own security. The final two phrases create attraction by demonstrating your own security and self-sufficiency, showing the avoidant that you're not desperate for them and that you have full life independent of them. Understanding these phrases reveals how displaying your own security makes you irresistible to avoidance. Phrase 6. I'm going to specific plan either way. You're welcome to join if you like. This phrase demonstrates you have full life that continues regardless of their participation, making their involvement optional rather than necessary. Avoidants are repelled by feeling needed desperately when someone's plans, happiness, or life depends on their participation. They feel burdened and pressured. This phrase eliminates that burden completely. I'm going to the concert, the weekend trip, the dinner with friends, communicates you have plans that will happen. Either way makes explicit that their participation isn't necessary for plan to occur. You'll go and enjoy yourself regardless. You're welcome to join if you like, offers invitation without pressure. They're invited, they're wanted, but not needed. The plan happens whether they join or not, so their choice is simply whether to participate in something good, not whether to rescue you from loneliness or disappointment if they decline. The phrase works because it demonstrates security and independence. You have good life that includes fun plans and social connection, and they're invited to enhance that life, but not necessary to create it. This independence is deeply attractive to avoidants because it proves you're not the desperate, dependent person they fear partners will become. Phrase 7. I care about you, and I'm also good on my own. Whatever you decide is okay with me. This phrase perfectly balances caring about them with complete non-attachment to outcome, creating the ultimate attractive combination for avoidance. This is perhaps the most powerful phrase because it communicates both genuine care and complete absence of desperation. I care about you acknowledges your feelings, making clear this isn't game where you're pretending not to care. You do care. You're not emotionally unavailable or playing hard to get. And I'm also good on my own demonstrates you're genuinely secure and self-sufficient. Your well-being doesn't depend on them. You have full life independent of this relationship. You're complete without them. Whatever you decide is okay with me shows genuine non-attachment to outcome. If they choose to be with you, great. If they choose to leave, also fine. You're not desperately invested in making them choose you. The phrase works because it's the exact combination avoidants find irresistible but almost never encounter. Someone who cares about them, meeting their need to be wanted, but doesn't need them desperately, meeting their need to not be burdened. Someone who wants to be with them, meeting their need to feel desired, but would be fine without them, meeting their need to not feel responsible for someone else's happiness. This combination is so rare that when avoidants encounter it, they often can't resist because it promises relationship without the suffocation and obligation they fear relationship entails. These final phrases create attraction through demonstration rather than through words alone. You're not telling them you're secure. You're showing them through having actual plans, through being genuinely okay, regardless of their choices, through living full, satisfying life that they can join, but that doesn't require them. This demonstration is far more powerful than any words about your security could be, because avoidants have heard people claim to be independent or secure while acting desperate and dependent. They trust behavior over words. When your behavior, making plans that happen, regardless of them, being genuinely unbothered by their choices, matches your words about being secure and independent, they experience cognitive consonance that's incredibly attractive. You're the real thing, actually secure person who actually has options and who actually would be fine without them. This reality makes them want to be chosen by you, precisely because being chosen by someone who has options and who doesn't need you is validating in ways that being needed desperately by someone with no options never is. The power dynamic created by these phrases is crucial. Instead of you pursuing them desperately, instead of you needing them to choose you, instead of you organizing your life around their availability, you're living your full life, and they're welcome to join or not join as they prefer. This inverted dynamic, where you're the secure one with the full life, and they're considering whether to participate, is far more attractive to avoidance than the usual dynamic where they're the unavailable one being pursued by a desperate person. When they're considering whether to join your life rather than you begging to be included in theirs, the power dynamic has shifted in ways that make them want to pursue, want to join, want to be part of what you have going on. You've become the attractive option rather than the desperate pursuer, and this shift makes all the difference in how they perceive you and whether they move toward you or away from you. Why these phrases work and how to use them without losing yourself. The effectiveness of these phrases depends on understanding the psychology behind why they work and ensuring you're using them from genuine place of security rather than as manipulation tactics while remaining desperate. Understanding the proper use prevents these phrases from backfiring or from costing you your self-respect. These phrases work because they speak directly to the avoidance core needs: autonomy, respect, freedom from pressure, while still maintaining your boundaries and worth. Every phrase addresses something avoidants desperately need: validation of their need for space, respect for their independence, freedom from feeling controlled, absence of pressure to make them feel safe. But critically, every phrase also maintains your boundaries and your worth. You're not sacrificing yourself, not making yourself smaller, not accepting poor treatment, not becoming doormat. The phrases honor both people's needs equally, which is the sweet spot that makes them effective. They work because they're not about winning the avoidant or manipulating them. They're about creating relationship dynamic where both people's needs matter and both people are respected. This mutual respect is what avoidants respond to because it promises relationship that won't consume them while also not requiring them to be with someone who doesn't respect themselves. The phrases only work when you genuinely mean them and when your behavior matches your words. Saying them while acting desperate destroys their effectiveness immediately. If you say, "Take all the time you need, I'm focusing on my work," while actually sitting home obsessing about them and checking your phone constantly, the disconnect between your words and your energy will be palpable. Avoidants are hypervigilant readers of authenticity because their survival has depended on detecting threats hidden beneath surface presentations. They'll sense immediately if you're saying secure things while being insecure, if you're claiming independence while being desperately dependent. The phrases only work when they're true, when you actually are focusing on your work, when you actually do have plans that will happen regardless, when you actually are okay with whatever they decide. This requires doing the internal work to reach genuine security before using these phrases, or they become manipulation that will backfire when your authentic, desperate energy contradicts your supposedly secure words. You must use these phrases from a place of having actual boundaries and actual self-respect, not as tactics to get avoidant while you remain boundaryless underneath. The most dangerous misuse of these phrases is using them as strategy to attract avoidant, while internally you have no boundaries and you're willing to accept any treatment to keep them. If you say, "I'm not going to accept being ignored for days," but when they ignore you for days, you don't actually enforce any consequences. The phrase becomes hollow words that teach them your boundaries are negotiable. If you say, Whatever you decide is okay with me, but when they decide to leave, you fall apart and pursue them desperately. The phrase becomes manipulation rather than authentic security. These phrases require backing them up with actual behavior, actually living your full life, actually enforcing your boundaries, actually being okay with them leaving if they choose to leave. Without behavioral follow-through, the phrases are revealed as manipulation tactics and trust is destroyed. The phrases work best when you've genuinely reached the internal state where you'd be okay with them staying or leaving because your worth isn't dependent on their choice. The ultimate effectiveness comes when you're not using phrases as tools to get specific outcome, but as authentic expressions of your genuine state of security. When you've done enough work on yourself that you know you'd be genuinely fine if they left. When you've built full enough life that the relationship is enhancement rather than necessity. When you've developed solid enough self-worth that their choice doesn't determine your value. Then, these phrases come naturally and authentically. And when they're authentic, when they come from genuine place of security, rather than from strategic place of trying to attract avoidant, they're irresistible because avoidants can sense the difference between strategy and authenticity. They're attracted to authentic security because it's rare and because it promises relationship that won't consume them, not attracted to strategic performance of security that hides underlying desperation. Using these phrases requires accepting that they might lead to avoidant choosing to leave and being genuinely okay with that outcome as better than being with someone who can't meet you healthily. The phrases are not magic words that guarantee avoidant will choose you. They're authentic communication that creates conditions where healthy relationship becomes possible while unhealthy relationship becomes impossible. If the avoidant cannot handle being with secure person who has boundaries, if they can only function with desperate person they can control through withdrawal, these phrases will trigger them leaving. This is actually positive outcome, even though it feels painful, because it means you've discovered early that they don't have capacity for a healthy relationship with you, and you've avoided years or decades of accommodation that would never have been sufficient. Being genuinely okay with this outcome, where using authentic, secure communication might mean they leave, is required to use the phrases effectively, because if you're not okay with them leaving, you'll communicate desperation underneath the secure words, and the phrases will fail. These phrases should evolve naturally from your own growth and security, rather than being memorized scripts you perform while remaining insecure internally. The healthiest approach is using these phrases as guide for the kind of communication that comes from security and using them as inspiration to do the internal work to become the secure person who naturally communicates this way, rather than as scripts to memorize and perform. Do the work to develop genuine security, build your full life, develop your independence, strengthen your self-worth, create boundaries you'll actually enforce. As you do this work, you'll find yourself naturally saying things similar to these phrases because they'll be authentic expression of your security rather than strategic performance. The phrases are effective because they communicate security. But if you become actually secure, you won't need to memorize phrases because secure communication will come naturally from your genuine state rather than from strategic script you're performing while insecure underneath. The ultimate goal isn't using these phrases to get the avoidant, but becoming the kind of secure person who naturally communicates this way and who attracts healthy people while repelling unhealthy ones. These phrases are tools for creating healthy dynamic with avoidant, if healthy dynamic is possible, but they're also filters that will reveal if healthy dynamic isn't possible, because avoidant cannot handle secure partner. Use them as both, as communication strategies that might help if the avoidant has capacity for growth, and as diagnostic tools that will reveal if they don't have that capacity. Either way, you win. Either you create conditions for healthy relationship to develop, Or you discover early that healthy relationship isn't possible, and you free yourself to find someone who can meet you in security rather than someone who needs your insecurity to feel comfortable. The phrases give you power, not by manipulating the avoidant into wanting you, but by expressing your genuine security in ways that attract people capable of healthy relationship, while naturally repelling people who can only function in dysfunctional dynamics, ensuring you end up either with avoidant, who's capable of growth, or without avoidant, who lacks that capacity. And both outcomes serve you better than staying with avoidant who can't meet you healthily. While you sacrifice yourself trying to make them want you through strategic performance of security you don't actually possess.